Welcome back to the deep dive. I hope you're ready because today we are looking at a stack of sources that, well, they feel less like a history lesson and more like a script for a tragedy.
A tragedy written by someone with a very dark sense of humor.
Exactly. We are unpacking the life of a man who is essentially the alpha and the omega of the American war in Vietnam.
It really is a narrative loop. We're talking about Dương Văn Minh, but, everyone knew him as Big Min.
Right.
And if you look at the timeline, it's almost too perfect. He is the general who lights the match that burns down the old regime in 1963.
Kicking off the whole era of coup.
And then, 12 years later, he's the exact same man who walks into the room, turns off the lights, and surrenders the country in 1975.
And that's the paradox that really jumps out at me. You have a general who leads this violent coup, which, well, that implies ambition, right? A real hunger for power.
Of course.
But then you have the same guy who, according to all these profiles, would apparently rather be pruning his orchids than actually run the country he just took over.
That contradiction is the core of his life. Was he a reluctant hero? A lazy opportunist? Or maybe a realist who saw the writing on the wall before anyone else did?
To understand that, I guess we have to look at the man himself. The nickname Big Min, it wasn't a metaphor?
No, not at all. The sources make a huge point of this. In 1950s Vietnam, the average soldier was much slighter. Min was a literal giant.
6 feet tall, nearly 200 pounds.
He physically dominated every room he walked into, which creates this, this natural assumption of leadership.
It's a biological bias, I suppose. You look to the biggest guy in the room.
He looked like a strong man. But the mission of this deep dive is to figure out if that physical presence was masking a sort of psychological hesitation.
So let's rewind. Before he was the orchid general or the coup leader, he was actually a legitimate war hero. He had scars.
Very literal scars. Min was born in 1916 in the Mekong Delta. Came from a wealthy background, which got him a top-tier French education.
And a little bit of trivia, he was a schoolmate of Norodom Sihanouk.
The very same. The future king of Cambodia. So Min is part of this colonial elite. He joins the French colonial army in 1940, and this is where we get the first real glimpse of his incredible physical resilience.
This is during World War II, right? The Japanese have invaded.
And the Japanese occupation was brutal. Min was captured by the military police.
They were notorious for torture.
Absolutely. He was beaten so severely he lost almost all of his teeth.
The notes mention he had only one tooth left.
Just one. But here's what's so telling about his character at that age. He didn't hide it. He would smile, this big, broad smile, just to display that single tooth.
Wow. That's a very specific kind of flex.
It is. He was using it as a psychological weapon, a badge of honor that basically said, I survived this, you can't break me.
So you have this single tooth hero. Fast forward to 1955, the French are gone, the country's split, and Ngo Dinh is trying to consolidate power in the south, but Saigon is, well, it's chaos.
It was the Wild West. You had the Bình Xuyên terrorizing the city.
And we should clarify, the Bình Xuyên wasn't just like a crime syndicate in the shadows. This was more like a pirate army, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It was a paramilitary group that openly controlled the police, the gambling, the opium trade. They ran Saigon, and then you had the Hoa, another private army.
So Dimp's government is barely hanging on. He needs a hammer.
And he sends in Big Min.
And Min delivers.
Incredibly effective. He leads the army into street combat, dismantles the Bình Xuyên, and basically hands the city back to Dim.
Which leads to this moment of peak favor, the kiss.
Yes. After a victory parade, Min drives up in his Jeep, the conquering hero. And President Dim, who is usually very stiff and formal.
A bit distant, yeah.
He was so relieved, he just embraces Min and kisses him on both cheeks right there in front of the cameras.
But in the world of authoritarian politics, being the conquering hero is a dangerous job.
Put the target on your back. Dim was famously paranoid. He looked at Min and didn't see a loyal general. He saw a rival who was more popular than he was.
So what does he do?
He starts stripping him of his power. It's the classic promotion to nowhere.
Right.
He makes him presidential military advisor.
Sounds impressive.
But historians say he was basically in charge of 3 telephones. No troops, no command. He was in a gilded cage, and for a man with Min's pride, that was humiliating.
So the resentment builds, and by 1963, the whole situation is melting down. The Buddhist crisis, monks on fire. The U.S. is losing faith in Drat.
Which brings us to one of the weirdest scenes in this whole story. The tennis match.
It sounds like a spy movie.
It really does. It's late '63. McNamara and General Maxwell Taylor fly to Saigon. They want to know if a coup is being planned.
So they set up a doubles match with Minh.
I mean, you can just picture it. These guys in white shorts sweating in the heat, and the Americans are just sort of lobbing questions over the net.
Trying to get him to talk treason.
They were dropping heavy hints, but Minh, he just played the game. Said absolutely nothing. They left the court totally bewildered, couldn't read him at all.
Which is funny because later he complained that Washington didn't support him.
He was cautious. But that silence didn't last. November 1st, 1963, the coup begins. Minh is the ringleader. And this is where the story gets really dark.
We're talking about President Diem and his brother Nhu.
Right. The coup is successful. The brothers escape. But then they agree to surrender. The assumption, certainly the American one, was that they'd be exiled.
Get them on a plane to France, out of the way.
But Minh sends an armored personnel carrier to pick them up. And he sends his personal bodyguard.
And this is the moment.
This is the moment. Witnesses at the headquarters. They reported seeing Minh give a specific gesture to his bodyguard. He held up 2 fingers on his right hand.
2 fingers for 2 brothers.
That was the interpretation. Kill them both. And the result was just brutal. They were killed inside that APC, not just shot, but stabbed, mutilated. It was a gangland hit.
There's a conversation recorded, right, between Minh and another general.
Yes, General Ton Phandong confronts him. He asks, why are they dead?
And Minh's reply is just chilling.
He says in this haughty, dismissive tone, and what does it matter that they are dead?
What does it matter? It suggests he just saw it as a practical problem. The problem's gone, so why complain about how?
It shows a complete lack of political foresight. He thought killing Diem cut the head off the snake, but instead, he created a martyr. He terrified his own colleagues.
So now Minh is in charge. He has the power, and this is where the Orca general persona really takes over. You'd think he'd be a ruthless dictator.
But the sources say he was, well, bored. A model of lethargy. That was the official U.S. assessment.
It's like the chase was more interesting than the catch.
It seems that way. He lasted just 3 months, and in that time, he didn't really do any governing.
His daily schedule reads like a retiree's. Mahjong, tennis, tea parties.
Tending to his exotic birds. He actually complained to a reporter that being head of state meant he didn't have enough time to grow his orchids.
You can't make that up. But was it just laziness, or was it also the structure they created?
It was definitely structural, too. They set up a council of 12 generals to run things. And, crucially, every single one had veto power.
Oh, that's a recipe for disaster.
Total paralysis. So, while they're debating in Saigon and Minh is watering his plants, the Viet Cong are just taking over the countryside. The whole security situation collapsed.
And of course, someone else sees a power vacuum. In January 1964, he's overthrown.
By General Nguyen Khan. And this coup is almost a comedy compared to the last one. It was completely bloodless.
Minh was asleep, right? Woke up to find his house surrounded.
And his first reaction wasn't fear. He thought it was a prank.
A prank like, the boys are messing with me.
Exactly. He thought some young officers were pulling a stunt. Shows just how disconnected he was.
So Khan takes over, but he keeps Minh around for a bit.
Yeah, as a figurehead. Minh was still popular, and the Americans liked him. But eventually the friction was too much. Minh gets shipped off to exile in Bangkok.
Where he could finally dedicate himself to tennis and gardening full-time.
And he did. He lived there for years. And here's a detail that says so much about his relationship with the U.S.
What's that?
The CIA paid for his dental bills while he was in exile. They finally fixed his teeth.
That's a powerful metaphor, isn't it? The U.S. is keeping him on the payroll, fixing his smile, just in case they need to pull him off the bench.
He was their plan B. He maintained those connections. In 1971, he almost ran for president against Thieu, but he pulled out, knowing the election was rigged.
And this is when he starts talking about a third force. What did he mean by that?
The idea was that Vietnam was trapped between 2 extremes. Hardline anti-communism and hardline communism. Mon believed there was a middle ground, a neutralist force that could reconcile the country.
It sounds noble, but maybe a little naive, given the North's commitment to total victory.
Very naive. But as the war dragged on, more people in Saigon started seeing Minh's third force as the only hope left. Maybe he's the only one the North will talk to.
Which brings us to the nightmare of April 1975. The North Vietnamese army is just rolling south. President Thieu resigns and flees.
The government is in total collapse. And suddenly, everyone turns to Big Minh.
It was a Hail Mary pass. The politicians in Saigon thought, okay, Minh is a moderate. he talks about reconciliation.
And there was one other huge factor: his family connections.
His brother was a general in the North Vietnamese army.
A major general, yes. His younger brother, Duong Van Nut.
I mean, that's incredible. Talk about a complicated Thanksgiving.
It gave them hope. They thought Minh could pick up the phone, call his brother, and negotiate a ceasefire. So on April 28th, with artillery booming closer, Minh is sworn in as president.
For all of about 48 hours.
And in those 48 hours, he realizes he has no cards left to play. The North wasn't interested in talking. They wanted unconditional surrender.
So he has a choice: turn Saigon into a rubble pile or give up.
And this is where his legacy gets really complicated. On the morning of April 30th, Minh goes on the radio. He orders a ceasefire to save the blood of our people. He tells the army to lay down their arms.
Let's paint that final scene. It's almost noon, April 30th. Minh and his cabinet are waiting in the Independence Palace.
Just waiting. Then the tanks crash through the gates. Soldiers swarm the building.
Minh stands up. He tries to maintain some dignity, some formality. He says to the North Vietnamese officer, "We have been waiting for you so that we could turn over the government."
He's trying to frame it as a transfer of power, a legal handover.
Yeah.
But the officer, Colonel Bu Van Tung, just cuts him down with what is, I think, the most devastating line of the whole war.
What does he say?
He looks at Minh and says, "There is no question of your transferring power. Your power has crumbled. You cannot give up what you do not have."
You cannot give up what you do not have. That's just absolute erasure. It's not a defeat. It's a declaration that you never even existed.
It stripped away the last illusion. Minh was taken into custody.
Now, usually, this is where the defeated leader is executed or sent to a camp for decades. But not Minh.
Surprisingly, no. He was held for a few days, then allowed to return to his villa. He lived there, in seclusion, for 8 years.
Back to the birds and the orchids.
Exactly. He just kept his head down. Maybe his brother helped, or maybe the communists just didn't see him as a threat anymore. In 1983, he was allowed to emigrate.
He ended up in Pasadena, California. But when he died in 2001, the reaction in the Vietnamese American community was not warm.
No, it was very bitter. For many refugees, he was the man who opened the gates to the enemy. They blamed him for losing their country.
But you have to look at the other side. What if he hadn't surrendered?
That's the question. Saigon would have been destroyed. Tens of thousands more would have died. So there's a strong argument that his realism in those final hours was an act of mercy. He saved the city by giving up the country.
It brings us back to that question of leadership. We celebrate the never surrender types. But sometimes maybe leadership is knowing when the game is over.
And that's the thought I want to leave with you. We call him Big Minh for his size. But his real legacy is about a different kind of weight. Was he a failure because he lacked the will to fight? Or was he the only one brave enough to accept reality and save what could be saved?
Was the surrender his greatest failure, or his one true act of service? History is rarely black and white, and Big Minh lived his whole life in the grayest of areas.
A giant man with a single tooth, a love for orchids, and the burden of ending a 30-year war.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.